The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest. When this gospel is proclaimed, we often talk about the need to pray for priests and for men to answer the call to the priesthood. And while that's good and true, we do need priests for the church to exist so that we can have the sacraments. That's not our focus for today. Another popular direction we could take this gospel is to encourage lay faithful to be laborers in the harvest and to embrace their mission in the world. And that's also good and true, but we aren't going there either. Today, we're going to talk about a group of laborers who have significantly diminished in the past decades, but are key to reaping an abundant harvest. Religious sisters. We all know that the body of Christ is sick in various ways, and I believe that one crucial but very often unconsidered reason for this sickness is the decline in religious sisters. Over the past decades, the number of religious sisters has plummeted. If you think that the number of priests has dropped in the past years, and it has, the decline in sisters is worse. In 1965, there were roughly 58,500 priests in the United States. By 2014, that number had dropped to about 38,000, a loss of approximately 20,000 priests in roughly 50 years, which is no small matter, and obviously the church is definitely hurting from that decrease. However, in that same 50-year time frame, the number of religious sisters in the United States dropped from about 180,000 to about 50,000, a staggering loss of 130,000 sisters in roughly 50 years. And the body of Christ is suffering without them. In fact, I believe that the church will not be fully healthy until religious sisters once again become a normal part of our Catholic life. I would actually go so far as to say that the church will not see full health until there are religious sisters in every parish of every diocese. Why? Why are religious sisters so crucial to the body of Christ? And why are they so necessary for our flourishing? The answer to this question lies in the mystery of Christ and his bride. In the end, there's only one marriage, that of Christ and the church. And while we don't tend to think much or maybe talk very much about the marriage of Jesus and the church, it's actually one of the central mysteries of our faith. Jesus died and rose again on that cross so that he could join to himself the church as a pure and spotless bride, and heaven will be an eternal celebration of that marriage. This is such a central reality that every human marriage points to Jesus' nuptial union with us. And when we see husbands and wives loving each other, we are meant to see an icon, an image of Christ loving the church and the church loving Christ. But married couples are not the only sign of this marriage. Priests and religious also reveal something of this final marital union, which is our ultimate destiny, between that final union between the Lamb and his bride. But they do it in a distinct way. The priest, as we know, is in alter Christus, another Christ. He is the living image of Christ the bridegroom here on earth. Of course, he's not a perfect image of Christ. I mean, who could be except for Jesus himself? But he nonetheless reveals Christ in a unique way because he has been conformed to Christ through holy orders. By his very life, the priest reveals who Jesus is and how he gives everything for his bride. But here's the key question. Who is the living image of the bride? The priest, as a man, right? He's a man, so he can only reveal one half of the picture, one half of the couple. But if he reveals Christ the bridegroom, who is it that reveals in a living image, in a living, tangible way, the church as bride? It's the religious woman. Of course, all of you lovely wives image the church as the bride in a beautiful way. And what I'm saying does not diminish or detract from that at all. but rather the religious woman reveals the bride in a distinct and tangible way. And if we really reflect on it, I think we know this. We know this deep down. For example, when we see religious sisters at youth conferences, we often see that there's just like lots of young men and women just like flocking to talk with them, and they're smiling and they're laughing. And why? Why is that? Or why was it that the world was so fascinated with Mother Teresa and her work when there's so many other, ministries and organizations that minister to the poor? And why is it that there's an undeniable beauty to seeing the sisters of life minister to mothers and their children? It's because the answer to these questions is because the religious sisters give a human face to the church as the bride, and we all, as the church, but also the world, we're all longing to see the face of the bride because their ultimate destiny to be joined with Christ as bridegroom and bride, to have that one union, to be totally united to him. The religious woman, by her very vocation and her identity, awakens us to the reality of the church, that we are the bride, and we're meant to give ourselves in total, joyful, loving response to our bridegroom. The religious woman reveals to all members of the church, us, what it means to be the church. And without this human face to the bride, we begin to forget who we are. We begin to forget that our ultimate destiny is to be joined with Jesus on the cross here on earth, but more importantly, ultimately we are going to be joined with him in heaven if we're faithful to living out that union on the cross. And thus, when we begin to forget who we are as a church, we begin to get sick. This is like, it feels so, right, like so intangible, so like there's religious sisters, but it actually impacts us deeply in our identity as a church. And that's why I say, I believe that every parish in every diocese needs religious sisters, because otherwise we're not going to remember who we are as church. And this is because each vocation builds up the others. Each vocation, whether it's the married life, priesthood, consecrated life in the world, religious life, whatever they are, it is a way to live out and image the love of Jesus in the world, and each of us strengthen and build up the others. Thus, the number of religious sisters has just dropped, the laity, the priests, we have not received the support. We have not seen that image of the bride that only sisters can give us. And thus, as I said, we need religious sisters in our parishes, in our diocese. And just to make this kind of personal, I have just experienced this so profoundly in a number of ways, but one of the most tangible ways was I was on a 30-day silent retreat a couple of years ago, and most of us there were seminarians, but there were 6 religious sisters there. And they were getting ready to profess their final vows in a year. And as I saw them just praying their holy hours, walking, whatever, just at meals, whatever, interacting, we weren't talking to each other because it was a silent retreat, but as I just saw them, I was just edified. It wasn't like I saw them immediately, I kind of just was like, oh, I just feel so happy. But just seeing them, I just was like, something in my heart was just moved. And I believe that it wasn't just like, oh, this is just me, but it's something that happens for all of us when we see religious sisters, or it can happen for all of us because of who religious sisters are. Now, at the same time, having said all of that, I want to acknowledge that not everyone has a positive history with sisters. I know that some sisters have failed to live out their vocations and have caused much scandal and much pain. And some of us here in this church, in this building, in this room, may have been hurt by religious sisters in the past. And on behalf of the church, I am sorry. I am deeply sorry that those who should have been revealing to you the face of the bride revealed something less. And it wounds, it grieves me, and I know that it grieves the heart of Jesus that such things happened. And yet, at the same time, the failures of some sisters do not negate the very real and important and fundamental role that they have in the body of Christ. So if the church is in such desperate need of sisters, and the church is, what can we as a parish do to help this problem? I mean, it seems, like as I said, it seems so like, oh, I mean, I don't know, what can I do? I'm studying to be a priest, right? I'm a man, I can't be a sister. Like, what can I actually do? Well, I'd like to address 3 groups of people: young women, parents, and the rest of us. First, all of you young women, I invite you to ask Jesus whether he's asking you to be a religious sister. It's a beautiful, beautiful vocation, and Jesus is going to open up the treasures of his heart to you because you have chosen him for your spouse. And I'm not trying to, right, by inviting him, I'm not applying any pressure, no coercion, no nothing. It accepts an invitation, a gentle and genuine and honest invitation for you to speak to Jesus about the desires of your heart and then to hear his desires for you. And as you do this, just really be honest with yourself and gentle with yourself, knowing that he is going to be gentle and honest with you. And if you do feel a tug, even a small one, to become a religious sister, please share this with someone you trust, because that's going to help you understand what Jesus is doing in your heart and what he's calling you to. And also feel free to reach out to Dawn Hausman, who is the Diocese of Lansing has a director. She's the director for women discerning religious life. And if you do reach out to her or talk to someone you trust, it's not like you're signing up to be a sister or saying, I'm making the promises right now. No, you're taking one step in responding to Jesus' love and asking him what is the desires of his heart for you. Second, to all of you parents, support your children in following God's will, whatever that may be. Please don't pressure your children into becoming priests and religious. That's not helpful, not the way to go. But do encourage them to consider that option. And then, if that is what the Lord is asking of you, of your children, be willing to surrender them to the Lord. I know that can be a deep and sometimes painful sacrifice, but God will restore and give you back hundredfold, even in the midst of that pain. Lastly, to all of us here, pray. Pray for vocations because your prayers have power. Last week I encouraged us to pray for our leaders because our prayers have power. And this week I'm encouraging you and us all to pray for religious sisters and vocations of religious life because our prayers have power. And to make this concrete, within the next week, it's very, very simple homework. It's even simpler than last week. I just want you to go online or find in print an image of a religious sister. And I want you to pray one Hail Mary for an increase in vocations and for those who are already in religious life. It's very simple, very doable. 1 week, one Hail Mary. But I want you to do it while you're looking at an image of a religious sister because I want you to see the face of the bride. I want you to see the face of one who is imaging the bride so that you and I can remember who we are as the church. And as you pray this way, you will be fulfilling part of Jesus' command to ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. So pray for vocations because your prayers have power.